Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Catskills. Our minister is Reverend Bob Janis. He will be back in the pulpit next Sunday. I am Vickie O'Doherty, the worship associate for this morning. Many thanks to our technical team. We got Tom Hackett over there, and got Mr. Wilde over there, Bruce Wilde. Thanks to them for help with this morning's service. We're excited to have attendees both in person and on Zoom. If you're new to the congregation, anybody new? Okay, not a problem. Big welcome to everyone. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are guided by a set of principles and written sources that encompass the many ways we come to know and understand the world, the universe, and the divine. Our principles are important to us at UU Catskills, and we live our lives our values on a daily basis. We affirm that Black Lives Matter. We are a welcoming congregation for the LGBTQ community. We are a congregational affiliate of the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and we are an active voice in the effort to address climate change. The Lenni Lenape people. If you would like to contact someone for those attending online, the contact list is shown on your screen. You can visit our website, uucatskills.org, to find contact information. Also, you can be added to the mailing list and to find the latest newsletter. If you're a visitor online and would like to be added to our mailing list, you can put your name and email address in the chat box area on the Zoom. We encourage you to read our newsletter that members and others on our distribution list receive by email. It is also found on our website. There you will find newsworthy items on the happenings in our UU community and also upcoming events for the month. I have two announcements this morning. Another collection will be held for Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and it's underway through March 26th. Please 5 and 6 diapers or Enfamil infant formula in the yellow canister. Items can be left in the sanctuary hallway box. It's over there. Or you can give money to UU member Paula Silby, who will be here next Sunday. She and Karen Howenstein will shop on your behalf. The other announcement. The annual pledge campaign is now underway. Pledge materials are available on the UU Catskills website under Pledge. Watch for an email announcement with a direct link to be sent out early this week to all UU Catskill members. Weekly updates are also sent by email, and there you'll find other events for the coming week. After the service, for those attending via Zoom, please stay for our breakout rooms for a virtual coffee break. For our prelude this morning, Catherine Catabiani will perform Nocturne in B flat, which was written by John Field. Please. come on up, Jake and baby Yoda, to light the chalice. Thank you. Yeah. Photo op. Please join me in reading the chalice lighting words in your order of service. They're not in there. Okay, well, if you remember them, speak them out, all right? We light this chalice in grateful, loving community, even in the darkest of times. May its flame light paths to courage, justice, and hope. And our unison affirmation. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. But connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. Our opening words today are being Kathy Eberlein.
This is Grace Meets Us Where We Are by Reverend Gretchen Haley. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship, no eternal optimism or clarity, no boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here or how you will solve that problem you are turning over and over and over in your mind. Your bills, your children may have been up half the night. Your hearing aids may not be working and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us as it found us, where love resides in each of us yet is somehow more than all, where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us and this day anew once again. Come, let us worship together.
And now our president, Mark Howenstein, the president of the Board of Trustees of the congregation.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Board Service Sunday. Today we will present stories about stepping out of comfort zones into a world of volunteering, to be sure, but one that I hope will inspire you as it has me to manifest yourself fully and wholeheartedly, not despite your flaws and vulnerabilities, but precisely on the basis of these unique characteristics of yourself. Today we will explore the ways in which our vulnerabilities are sublime, frightening, yet oh so beautiful. For although vulnerability triggers our deepest fears of failure and shame, it is only by way of vulnerability that we can reach the heights of human experience, those of love, belonging, joy, courage, creativity, and authenticity. According to Brené Brown, a recognized expert on vulnerability, quote, "Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love, on belonging, and on joy. The very experiences that make us the most vulnerable, yet the most alive. For as Thomas states in the Gnostic Gospel, if you bring forth what lies inside of you, what you will bring forth will save you. But if you do not bring forth what lies inside of you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. It takes courage, a noble heart, to bring forth the fullness of who we are for all to see. When we do so, we do walk a plank over a sea of potential criticism and rejection. But if we shirk from walking this plank, we will surely sacrifice the fullness of who we are and may yet burst upon a dance floor, proposing to the person you love, or taking on a new role or project. We walk the plank every day. But only by doing so do we get to dance, to marry, and to grow. I hope that by the end of this service, you will come to see vulnerability as a gift that calls you to be open, to be wholeheartedly yourself, so that we can truly connect to others and engage fully in this one precious life that is given to each of us. Thank you.
Please join in singing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple," and stand if you are able. It's in the gray hymnals.
And now, not for children only. This story is a story from India and China. It's called The Cracked Pot, a story for anyone who is not quite perfect. Which is, I guess, all of us, right? A water bearer in India had two large pots. One hung on each end of a pole, which she carried across the back of her neck. So there's two pots over here. One of the pots had a crack in it. The other pot was perfect. At the end of the long walk from the stream to her mistress's house, the cracked pot arrived only half full. For a full 2 years, this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots of full water to her master's house. The perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, but the poor crackpot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to only fulfill half of what it had been intended to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be a bitter failure, it spoke to the water bearer one day by the stream. "I am ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the bearer. "What are you ashamed of?" "I have been able for the past 2 years to deliver only half of the load because of the crack in my side causes water to leak out on the way back to the master's house from the stream. Because of my flaws, you have to do all this work and you don't get the full value of what you are doing," the pot said. The water bearer felt sorry for the old cracked pot, and in her compassion she said, "As we return to the mistress's house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Indeed, as they went up the hill, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wild flowers on the side of the path, and this cheered it up some. But at the end of the trail, it still felt bad because it had leaked out half of its water once again, and it apologized again for its failure. The bear said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted wildflower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while you walk back from the stream, you have been watering them. For 2 years, I have been able to pick those beautiful flowers to decorate my mistress's table. Without you, being just the way you are, she would not have had the beauty to grace her house." The moral of the story is that each one of us has our own unique flaws. Each one of us are cracked pots. But it's the cracks and the flaws that we have that make our lives so very interesting and rewarding. Perhaps if we learn to embrace our flaws, them, but by directing them to good use, we too can water the road behind us and begin to watch our flowers bloom.
Love give light to every face. May the kindness which you learn light your hearts till you return.
So now is a time for meditation, everyone, and we'll start with Johnson Lewis. May we have the courage to open ourselves to the pleasures and wounds of life. May we have the strength to be open and honest with ourselves and others, even when it is difficult. May we have the wisdom to understand that when we travel through the mist of uncertainty, openness and vulnerability make it more possible to find the way through the mist. To be open and vulnerable is to be alive. So we'll take a few moments for meditation. You can follow the bell into silence.
Half of this Sunday's collection will be donated to a local charity. This month's charity is the A.J. Williams Myers African American Roots Center. The admission of the center is to promote literacy through teaching and learning about the African roots experience, including history and culture, through a dynamic exchange of information, ideas, and creativity. You can also donate by using the donate page on our website, with PayPal, or by mailing your check through the U.S. mail. You'll see a QR code on today's order of service for PayPal. Music is Nocturne by John Field. Our thanks for your gifts. Today, our homily is presented by four members of UU Catskills. Our first speaker is Mark Howenstein, the President of the Board of Trustees.
I have had many roles in my life. I have been a lawyer and a professor, a husband and a father, the chair of a Law and Society program, and the president of your Board of Trustees. Every new role or project that I have undertaken has brought an initial sense of trepidation, an unease regarding the uncertainty of what might lie ahead. Will I stumble? And what will be the consequences? This was probably most intense when I took on the presidency of the UUCC in 2010. At that time, our president had relocated to Texas. Our treasurer had resigned. Our minister of 18 years was leaving us, and I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Lots of change, lots of gaps, lots of uncertainty, and little stable support aside from my board, which was solid. Unfortunately, a series of personal crises led to the resignation of 4 of those board members in the first year. And to make matters worse, it became increasingly clear that our bookkeeper was inept and our finance. My fears of failure and inadequacy erupted, but I did not let them overtake me. I initiated a practice of meditation and movement to center and calm myself and to counteract my MS. I let go of my negative feelings and perspectives which were no longer serving me, and I began to nurture an attitude of hopeful optimism. And I reached out to others for help, to my board and to other seasoned leaders of our congregation, to our new minister, my family, and my therapist. To this day, I'm not quite sure how we made it through that time, but we did so together. And in doing so, I cultivated many of the coping skills that I continue to rely upon. In doing so, we showed the congregation that we could endure the most challenging of times with grace and determination. Had I listened to the fears of those days, I would have been all the poorer. Fortunately, I have rarely succumbed to my fears of failure and inadequacy, for it was in and through the roles that I have taken that I've grown the most, stretching the boundaries of my comfort zone, developing new talents and skills, and making new friends and acquaintances that have made all the difference in my life. I never could have known that any of this beforehand as I deliberated whether I should take on a specific position. Only by entering into these roles did I discover what was being given to me. And what was being given to me was another opportunity to live life to its fullest and to grow through the process. As Brené Brown highlights in her salient book, Daring Greatly: How the Courage to Be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. Quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong stumble, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is covered by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, coming up short again and again, while devoting himself to a noble cause. And who, at worst, fails while daring greatly." This is vulnerability. Vulnerability is not knowing victory or defeat. It is understanding the necessity of both. It is engaging fully in life itself. It is being all in. Our congregation needs the involvement of every one of us. It relies on the time, treasure, and talent of all of its members. Please pledge and volunteer as you are able, turning any obstacles you may encounter into opportunities for engagement and growth. Dare to be great. We will now hear from 3 other leaders in our congregation as they tell their stories of engagement. First up will be Joyce White, who is a member of our Board of Trustees and a co-facilitator of relearning our ABCs of LGBTQ+, a small group ministry for everybody. Welcome, Joyce.
I'll just take a moment to feel vulnerable and embrace it, and it makes me feel alive. One of my first memories of UU Catskills involves Bill Toole. For those of you who don't know Bill, he's one of our talented pianists who occasionally serves us on Sunday mornings. This particular Sunday was Reverend Erica's installation, and the sanctuary was packed. Bill was performing an adaptation of Gilbert and Sullivan's "I Am the Very Model of a Modern Major General" in honor of Reverend Erica. If you're familiar with this song, you know how difficult it is. It's even hard for me to say it. Not too far into the song, Bill stopped singing and simply announced he was starting over. Now, projecting myself into this situation, I felt bad for Bill. I assumed he was embarrassed, but I quickly realized that he wasn't. His performance didn't meet his standards, and he was comfortable starting over. Bill knew, and I didn't yet know, that it was okay to be vulnerable because he was in a safe and forgiving place. And that memory has stayed with me all of these years. Most likely, all of us have volunteered at some point in our lives, either formally with an organization or simply helping out a friend in need. We all might have different reasons. We're passionate about the project or organization. Perhaps we're looking for a mentor, or we may join a committee in order to mentor someone else. If we're feeling brave, we step out of our comfort zone and try something new. At one time or another, I think I've tried all of these. As children, many of us were expected to share in household responsibilities. We may have had to perform chores in order to earn an allowance. We learned that, like it or not, someone had to take out the trash or clean the toilet, and while we may not have enjoyed it, we had a sense of belonging to a family. UU Catskills is a similar type of community. We still need the trash taken out, the toilets cleaned, coffee made, bills paid, and sermons delivered. We do what we can with our skills and time, and when we fall short in either of those areas, we hire someone to perform them if we are able. We all have different styles of volunteering. Some of us wait to be asked, some of us step right up, but my favorite is those who respond to the question, "Can you help with an immediate yes," so quickly that they may not be sure to what they just agreed to. Karen Miller springs to mind. One of my first tasks here was to clean out the barn, and I was so new that I didn't know what could be safely thrown out and what needed to be saved. Someone suggested that I ask Karen what needed to be saved, but they had to point out to me who Karen was, because I had no idea who she was yet. I approached her and explained my dilemma. Karen listened and paused for a minute and then said, "I have a few hours tomorrow. I can help. Does that work?" I learned from Karen that our congregation can be a place where mentors appear and we all help each other. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were painfully transitioning to Zoom and learning from our mistakes, our services were sometimes glitchy. Other congregations with more talent had glitzy services, but it was fitting that ours was glitchy. Our congregation more than makes up for our occasional lack of talent with tenacity. Time and again, I watched our worship associates as the sound or video cut out, and they didn't give up. They came back the next week and tried again. They stepped out of their comfort zone again and again, and I realized that, like Bill Toole, they saw our congregation as a safe place to learn and try out new skills. At about the same time, the board learned that we needed proper equipment in order to produce better services. We didn't have the funds, but a $20,000 grant was available. Now, at that particular moment in time, none of our members had grant writing experience. As the application deadline approached, we realized that we would likely miss out on this opportunity to improve our services, but we kept asking. It seemed that no one had this gift to offer us. I think we may have been just hours away from that deadline when Paula Silby approached us. And while she had no grant writing experience, She knew someone who did and who might be willing to help us. We were able to extend the grant deadline. Paula's friend was able to help us. We got the grant, and we were able to purchase the cameras, mics, lights, and wires that we needed to make it all work. Paula did not have the gift of grant writing, but she had the gift of looking outside the box and approaching a problem from a different. I think that perhaps the best reason to volunteer is to consider it a part of our spiritual practice. Almost all faith-based organizations consider serving others to be a spiritual endeavor. Sharing of our time and talent is an important part of living a balanced spiritual life and is the heart of spiritual practice. We all have certain skills, and when these gifts are shared, they multiply and grow. When we keep them to ourselves, they wither and die. Many of us may be familiar with the parable of the long spoons. Someone asked the difference between heaven and hell and is shown two identical rooms with many people sitting around a table. In the center is a large pot of soup, and each person has been given a long spoon to eat with. However, the spoon is longer than their arms. In the first room, the people are all weak and sickly as they are not able to eat from the spoons. They're able to label the soup from the bowl, but are not able to get the spoon to reach their mouths, and so they are starving, and this is hell. In the second room, the people are well fed and happy, as they have discovered that the spoon can easily reach the person sitting across from them, and they are feeding each other. This is heaven. The lesson of this parable is that by nurturing others, we nurture ourselves. And research has shown that there are many other benefits to volunteering. Our brain produces the feel-good chemicals that lower stress and reduce inflammation. It boosts our confidence and life satisfaction and increases our empathy, resulting in a positive outlook on life. And it makes our community a better place, a community of people who feel good about ourselves and have a positive outlook on life. Gandhi said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Let's all go out and lose ourselves. Our next presenter is Erin Hilgart. Erin joined the congregation in 2018 after she and her family moved to Woodstock from New York City. Erin has been an active member of the congregation, starting with the leadership and minister search committees, then the Committee on Shared Ministry, and in more recent years, the Board of Trustees roles, including her current role as Vice President of the Board of Trustees. She also founded the 30+ group, and her children, Amel and Liesel, are active members of the Religious Exploration.
Thank you. So I'm going to start this kind of at the beginning, which is before I was a UU and knew what that was. I grew up in a small town in western Wisconsin, and our family and kind of a lot of the families in the community were active in our Lutheran congregation across the street. And I have to admit that I probably thought, even though my dad was the chairman of the Board of Trustees for a while and I knew he went to a lot of meetings, I probably thought that the minister did everything that it took for a congregation to work, because I saw him the most, and yeah, that's probably what I thought. But there were, of course, a lot of people that came together to make a congregation like that thrive, and I, as a child, was really just a beneficiary of it. I kind of racked my brain for times. I know we volunteered, kind of for coffee hour or things like that. There was one summer when I was too old to be a camper but too young to be a counselor at Luther Park, which was the camp. So I did spend a summer cleaning toilets and dishwashing so that I could kind of be there in the intermediary stage. But other than that, I can't say I can take a lot of credit for the work that congregation did. And then sort of fast forward to college in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was 18 or 19, sitting in a religious exploration class because I went to a Catholic liberal arts women's college called Overno. And lo and behold, on an overhead transparency, I discovered UUism. There were the 7 principles, and I said, that's what I believe. And from there, I started, over the next 20 years, whenever I could, to visit UU congregations. And again, over those 20 years, I took a lot away from it, but I didn't give a lot because I didn't become a member. I did spend some time when I lived in London working on a collaborative inquiry about the future of liberal religion in Great Britain, which is really about the idea that liberal religions were on the decline in Britain, and I believe still are. We didn't solve that problem, sorry. But fundamentalist religions were on the rise. And so what do we have to offer? And so I did participate in that, but again, I think I took probably more away from it than I actually gave. Then fast forward to 2016, I moved to Woodstock. I started coming to this congregation. I benefited a lot from a lot of the sermons. Everyone was very kind to me. I had a Mel at the time, and the next one on the way. So again, I was more of a recipient and less of a volunteer. And then in 2018, when Reverend Erica did Liesel's dedication, when she was just under 1 year old, she was so generous, and the whole congregation was so generous that they did, this whole, I don't know if anyone was here that remembers it, they did this whole service kind of around her, and I was like, wow, and they didn't really ask for anything in return. What a dedicated in the city. I had to actually pay and rent space, and it was a different thing. So I was again struck by the generosity of this congregation. And shortly thereafter, I joined, and somebody said, I guess as they do in the membership process, so what do you want to do? And I said, I honestly was really open, and I can't remember if I said it out loud or under my breath, but I didn't really want to do anything that's related to my work, because I'm already doing that, so I'd rather do something else. And I honestly think in my mind, although I probably never really told anybody, but I was picturing more like caring committee. But as soon as I joined, a few weeks later, Reverend Erica gave me a call, and she said, I'm looking at your website, and I see you do leadership development, and we have this project and this committee. And I'm like, wow, they have a leadership development committee at this congregation. Okay, so will you do this project, and will you take on that work? And I said, okay, I'll do it, whatever. So I did it. Reviews, by the way, of each of these committees I'm going to talk about, but it wasn't my favorite because I was so new. And if you are, put your hand up if you've been on that leadership development committee. I know Mary has, because she took over from me after I handed it back over. So a few of you, but it can be challenging because you're in the role of when the congregation needs something done, you're supposed to think through who could do that and reach out to them and hopefully convince them to do it. So sort of matching skills with and talents with need. But I didn't know people yet. It was pretty tough. We were doing a challenging project that didn't really work out. For those of you who were with me on it, you'll remember that. So it didn't work out that well. But in this culture of this congregation, that's kind of okay. We talked about it. I told why I thought it wasn't working. We ended up kind of tabling that project and kind of moving on. And we're still trying to solve some of the challenges that project meant to address. So I digress. But it wasn't my favorite project. But luckily, I didn't give up. I was then asked to join Committee on Shared Ministry. Who's been on Committee on Shared Ministry? So you see a few people. So I loved that committee. I was on it with you, Regina. Yeah, I loved that committee. First of all, it was really an initiation for me into UU Catskills and into UUism in a way, because first of all, we had 2-hour meetings. And I know that sounds weird, but coming from the city, I was like, oh, we're gonna meet for 2 hours. Like, I'm not gonna be done in an hour. So I had to sort of adjust my tempo and really kind of be very present and in the moment. And the way that had been positioned to me at the time when Reverend Erica asked me to do that, she had said, it's if you think of the board doing sort of the hard skills and the hard stuff, the finance and the business side of the congregation, COSM is more the soft side and the human side. So I was like, yeah, I like that. I think that'll be good. So I did like that. It only lasted a year, though, because then Mary Evans, who I'd handed the leadership committee back to, gave me a call and said, your name came up for the board. So I was like, oh, do I really want to give up this very comfortable, enjoyable wonderful group of people to go do this thing. So anyway, I called someone who had apparently recommended me, and I said, I really think Cosm's better, don't you? No, they sort of convinced me or gave their pitch, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I had to give up COSM, which I loved, and start the board. And then it was 2020. So it was not a comfortable time for anybody. I mean, I was home in my pajamas a lot, snacking, I'll admit, but it wasn't really comfortable in the broadest sense of the word. And the board met on Zoom, and within about 2 months, I was like, oh my dear God, these people do a lot of work. They do the board work, but they also do sort of, so I was like, wow, this is, I wasn't doing that volume of work yet, but I was really in awe that they were. A year later, I was doing that volume of work, but it was a steep learning curve. So definitely, I suppose, vulnerable. I didn't think of it that way, but it definitely was. And then in my second year, which was last year, the current vice president had wanted to step down, so we agreed that she would step down, and I volunteered to take her place. So I sort of switched into that role. And so what attracted me about that role is it's actually a very important role in this congregation. I know maybe it's not in some boards, but because we're so committee-led, it's a role. I don't know if people remember the circle diagram that Reverend Nisa drew. It helped us come to a sociocracy. It just shows how we're not like a board at the top with committees beneath and then people that do the work. We're a kind of concentric circle. So we all sort of work together. And the role of the vice it's really about kind of navigating across those different committees. So I really enjoy this because the things that have come up that have gone across committees are the Chalice Letters Grant, sort of looking at our strategy, past, present, and future, so telling that story to Chalice Lighters about how we had a strategy about a building here, and then we had to pivot in the pandemic, and then we had a new strategy that didn't feel like a strategy, but actually was still aligned to our mission. So I helped tell that story, which is something that I enjoy doing. And I got to work with lots of different committee members. Also things like, Joyce's founding of the LGBTQ shared ministry, that really arrived out of a lot of different conversations that involved different people, not exactly committee work, but really thinking big picture across the congregation. So I've enjoyed it. So this is my third year, and then starting in July, that'll be my fourth year on the board, so my 2-year official term as vice president. So after that, in my mind, I'll be done with the board, and I'll be ready for something next. So I reflect on all this, and I kind of reflect on it in terms of any maybe advice or questions I might ask you as members of the congregation or potential new members of the congregation. What is next for you? What is next for me? And some of the principles that I take away from this little story that I tell you is that comfort can definitely lead to growth. There was a sermon I heard during my time in London. Reverend Andy Pacala talked about always looking for comfort and growth and what that balance is. I do think comfort can lead to growth. COSM gave me a lot of growth. Oh, I forgot one too. I was on, during that same time, on the Minister Search Committee. So very comfortable in a way because it aligned with things I had skills for, but it still puts you in a vulnerable position because you're doing it differently with a different group of people with a different purpose. But comfort can really lead to a lot of growth. And comfort isn't the opposite of vulnerability. There is safe spaces within vulnerability, I think, to grow. You need that safe space sometimes to grow. Learning and growth also happens when you're vulnerable and when you're saying, I'm not going to get too comfortable. Even though I love this thing, I'm willing to give it up and do something else. And even if you don't do that, it's going to happen anyway. Even if I'd stayed on the very same committee, I wouldn't have done that. But if I had, it would have probably changed over time and become more comfortable or less comfortable. So we can never really get too comfortable. It's about living sort of on the edge of what's next, being open, possibly just saying yes, or just being open to what is possible, and kind of thinking about what am I open to? What's next for me? In what way can I give? The good news is whatever you decide, you are in a safe space. If you did quote unquote fail, if that were even possible, this congregation definitely has your back. It is a place where you can do that. You can't say that about everywhere. So if you want to give something a try, do it. I did, and I feel that I've definitely felt the benefits of it, and I've done that in community with all of you. Thank you. I'm introducing. The next speaker is Vickie O'Doherty. She has more than 30 years of variety of volunteer experience within UU Catskills.
I've been a member of this congregation since about 1992. In those days, we had very few members, so it was not unusual that as soon as you joined, someone would ask you to be on the Board of Trustees. Okay? Don't worry, doesn't happen anymore, all right? But I just want to let you know, we the people run this congregation. The minister, we hire. Then we run the congregation. We still do. We ran it then, we ran it now. In the years that trustees, a cake maker, a member of the worship committee, a dishwasher, a member of the food justice group, a member of and chairperson of the buildings and grounds committee, part of a visioning task force, a sandwich maker, a part of welcoming congregation committee for LGBTQ people, part of the climate action team, and there are probably a few roles that I have forgotten, which I just remember the COSM, I was on that. You just reminded me, Erin. Committee on Shared Ministry. So, in my workaday world, as a federal employee, I was always an underling, never wanting to step up to be a supervisor because it looked too challenging. But here at UU Catskills, I chose to be on the Board of Trustees because I care about this place. And it was that caring that caused me to want to be a trustee at first, and then eventually the president, secretary, and treasurer of the congregation, not all at the same time. When the congregation, but as we grew, I realized that it was the responsibility of the board to look out for the greater good of everyone in the congregation. It was this experience that taught me what a congregation is supposed to be doing. It was stepping up that helped me to learn to lead and made me sure of what I was doing. I was also on the Buildings and Grounds Committee. The committee has responsibility for getting the parking areas plowed, the grass mowed, gardens weeded, keeping the buildings clean with a contractor, and getting facilities repaired and maintained. When I was a kid, I asked my father, who had a carpentry business, if I could work for him. My 4 brothers got paid to work for him on weekends and on their summer vacations. He told me that I couldn't work for him because what would the customers think? Because it was a girl working for him. So here I was at UU Catskills with all the fun laid out for me to do. I was the Building and Grounds chairperson for 10 years. And I learned a lot and got confident by doing the work. It still helps me now as a homeowner. In my present role as a worship associate on the worship committee, I am putting a talent that I've had for many years as a public speaker and teacher to good use. In my role as a worship associate, I organize Sunday services by choosing words with an eye towards spiritual depth that fit with the topic for that Sunday. The beauty of this role is that it fulfills the 4th principle of Unitarian Universalism, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I am challenged to find meaning not just for me, but for everyone attending the Sunday service. I remember a minister that we had a few years ago who spoke of both the grand and the humble work of the congregation as being ministries. The ministry of the congregational work is about supporting each other in this community, toward making this place a spiritual home and acting in the wider world through social justice. My ministries have challenged me to learn and grow into being a greater participant in this community and in the wider world. Our hymn today is hymn number 1008, and it's in the teal hymnal. Please stand if you're able. Our closing words are titled "To Risk," and they were written by William Arthur Ward, and they're read by Tom Hackett.
To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. They may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live.
Please join me in the closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Our attendees here in the sanctuary are invited to stay for coffee, refreshments, and socializing, and we have tables staffed by members of the various committees and clubs of UU Catskills for those interested in getting more involved in the ministry of our life in this congregation. For those on Zoom, we invite you to stay connected so that our technical host can who have attended our service today via Zoom. Go in peace or stay in peace. Thank you.